It's a great point though, because the way the crowd system, or to my knowledge, having not like probed into it too much, but the crowd system for Assassin's Creed is really different to say GTA, where each
Mhm.
individual NPC has like a daily rhythm and things which they do and friends and networks. Whereas I think there's a little bit of that in Unity, but for the most part, it's people just walking on splines. So they just have like pathfinding around the city. They don't actually do jobs or do anything. So the
Mm.
function of the crowd is to provide like a feeling of people being in the space and not to actually be people, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, basically, that amounts the same as when you're playing a sports game, and you start paying attention to the crowd. The move sets they have are close to nothing, basically
Yeah,
one move, and they just repeat that.
yeah,
But you're playing the sport,
Yeah,
so
but it
you
was
don't
like
pay
this
attention
before
to
when
that.
Angus was stalking this lovely couple. Like they would walk
It
10
wasn't Angus, it was
steps.
my
Okay,
avatar.
I'm sorry. Your avatar was stalking a couple, and they would take 10 steps, look at each other adoringly, kiss, take 10 steps, look at each other adorably, kiss, etc., etc. And they just walk.
Hmm.
But it's like, why are they out there? What
Yeah,
are
but
they
it's like I
doing? What is
just
their
said,
game?
you
Yeah.
don't pay any attention to that while you're playing the game.
Hmm.
So it's not a disturbing
Oh, there's
factor.
more graffiti.
I think.
Actually, because if you're normally playing, now we're really sort of touring pairs. We're not even
Of course.
playing. I've never really looked at the graffiti before. Although I would have. It's a very cool thing. Now I know that's there, but
Hmm.
it's the first time I noticed it, and it's of course the same with the crowd as well.
In the second one, wasn't there something with the graffiti where you could go into some kind of subzone
I can't remember.
when you got in front of the graffiti and you pressed a button? It synchronized with something and you went into the subzone.
No.
I'm pretty sure of that. I think it
Could
was
be.
in
You can't
Revelations.
go into these buildings, by the way, right?
Yeah. Well, some of them, many of them, actually.
And basically every of those graffitis was a revelation.
Mm-hmm. What's
yeah.
that on the wall?
What? Where?
The poster. The text.
It's
It's
a
from
new,
Vinci.
a new
It's a
Royal
law.
decree?
Well, I don't
It's
think
a
it's a
law.
royal decree. I think it's just a decree by one of the people. Well, the people, the new government. So we can go
Are you
in
gonna
here.
do the mission? What is your mission? What are you supposed to do?
When I'm supposed to be?
No, what's your mission?
Yeah,
I'm not
what
on a
you're
mission
doing.
yet. I was
Oh.
making my way there, and then you really wanted to see the inside of the building.
Would you say you were making your way downtown?
Oh no!
Mark, home then.
Bad.
Oh well, thank you for being the comic relief here.
Someone has to do it.
Oh, zing!
Oh, look at these convenient bridges.
Ah, I like it though. It really is a nice game. This one.
I'm
I
starting
know
to
that
get
it was
the
sort
feel
of
for the
bombed
game
by the
again.
press, the media press, but I really like it.
Yeah.
Why? What did they say negatively about it?
Well, when it first came out, as I said, there were kind of a
Because
couple
of
of
all the
bugs
bugs?
going on, and there were also lots of other little problems with it. That there was basically too much to do. We're now ignoring most of the things that you can actually do, but especially if you have a bit of OCD, there's
I see.
too much. There's just too much little things going
But
on.
yeah, The Witcher is exactly the same, but at least that
Oh.
was released without bugs.
Mm.
Well,
More or less. I mean, this was one of those main games
yeah.
that got heavy flack for being released when it was actually not finished,
ready for release.
quote unquote.
I guess when a lot of people also pre-order it and look forward to it, then they get
I'm not pre-ordering ever again.
extra sad.
Ooh.
Assassinate him. Drag him down.
Ah, he's already spotted me.
He
You can still do that.
Yeah.
has a bayonet.
Basically, when you can like stab them and then throw them off the balcony, which is
But he could have stabbed
Awesome.
you, but he was a noob.
Well,
maybe that was it.
jump kill. There we go.
Finally, a bit of action.
Yeah.
So, is this like the mayor's house?
Get him,
The
get him.
Hotel de Ville?
That was poorly executed.
Yeah.
That was nice. I like the counter mechanic of Assassins.
It sometimes gives a nice flow. Sometimes it's just, as you said, a lot of waiting.
Well,
Oops.
if they attack in series, then you can basically rile them up 4, 5, 6 after one.
Yeah.
At least I used to be able to do that. I probably wouldn't
Same
now.
here, same here. I tell you, this is one of the games I've never really played. I've always played these games by myself. You really need to have your attention on it, I have to say.
Yeah.
Pretty weird. There's lots of games I can play in company. This is definitely not one of them, I'm noticing.
Are we distracting you too much?
Yeah, shut up. I'm playing a game.
It's because this game is more subtle.
Pickaxes?
Double assassinate. There we go.
Why pickaxes?
Well, why not?
Oh, because they're revolutionaries?
Oh, wait, shit.
And they've just picked up farm tools? Or
Yeah.
mine tools?
That's it. Wait, I probably shouldn't be doing this.
You don't get any health back.
No, when you're in a fight you don't. Probably should be sneaking around and not walking in through the front door.
You think?
You can brute your way through, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I can.
Just switch weapons to a halberd or something.
No, I like this one. It's my... What is it called again? It's not a katana, but something like that.
I like it as well.
So I wonder if this is one of those points of time where game designers and developers and archaeologists and historians speak different languages with regards to, say, these terms like authenticity and accuracy. And if we mean different things with the same word, and therefore have different ideas about authenticity as archaeologists than game designers might have.
I'd go for that one first. Yeah.
I think it really has to do with, of course, as scholars, as archaeologists. It's not so much about authenticity, because whoever reads a paper of yours and says, well, this is not an really authentic paper, this is not really how it was in that time, but they're really about you accurately representing the facts that you've gathered.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, if you think about authenticity in archaeology, it doesn't really come up very often. Of course, in your line of work, museum studies, it's much more important.
Yeah.
Because what is authentic? I mean, especially not since the sort of the post-processual revolution that we talked about a bit earlier already. What is authentic, right? We all know that there's not an authentic Taino site, Mayan city, authentic revolutionary Paris.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you would ever pose.
No, within museums it's always difficult because a lot of times there's this big conversation about, replicas versus authentic objects. And especially when you talk about conservation of objects, then it's like which time phase of this object is the authentic time phase. Like, for instance, say you have the pyramids and you have graffiti on it from Roman times that say I was here,
Mm-hmm.
and you have graffiti on it from more recent times, then which time phases do you want to keep and conserve, and what is authentic or not authentic? When does something become not real? Because a lot of people who go to museums because they want to see real things.
Of course.
Then what is real? So within museums, it's always a big discussion about authenticity. But I guess within archaeology, not in the same way.
Angus is in trouble in the meantime. Severe trouble.
Authentically getting slaughtered here, which is probably quite authentic. One guy against 6. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Sorry.
That was horrible.
That was like Forrest Gump.
This is probably like the worst gaming I've ever done in a... Well, basically since I was playing Super Mario when I was 6. Wow.
You just got shot like Forrest Gump. In the behind.
In behind. Nice. Talking about authenticity, Forrest Gump. Nice.
No, so
Let's try this
what
one
I
more
want to
time.
say is that in museums, people expect to see things that are real, but they don't know if they actually are. So it doesn't really matter. Maybe it
But is
doesn't
that
really
not the
matter.
same for Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, so
For an
they-
outsider, I mean, not for a historian or an archaeologist like us.
No, but then it starts becoming a problem. So if you go to a museum and you take everything at face value and you think that, yeah, everything I see here is real because, it's in a museum,
It's
so
in a
it should be
museum.
real. Which is problematic because we know that it's not. And if the same goes for video games, then it's even worse. So if people play Assassin's Creed and they're like, oh yeah, this is in Assassin's Creed, it's a historical game, so it should be real, right? It's
But do you think, first of all, in museums, depending on the museum, of course, some museums will indicate when something is a replica or a reconstruction, but usually it'll be in this really tiny font somewhere on some label, and I guess not everyone will read that. But do you think museums carry the same sort of authority as video games? Do you think a game like Assassin's Creed carries the same authority to be as historical or as accurate as what's shown in a museum?
well, no, but
Good.
but maybe it should, in the sense that it's not like if the game doesn't really care at all about historical accuracy or about visual accuracy, then why do you even do it? Like, it's just an abstract way to make money that, we include the French Revolution, for instance, because it's a selling point, and then we start questioning things like, the actual choices of the game. So what do you care most and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, go on.
I guess the issue with that is that when you present something as a simulation, or if you present it as being, or you tout it around kind of being like, oh, it's historically accurate, we did so much research, there is that kind of conflict. It does carry an air of authority, the kind of like Assassin's Creed franchise, which potentially, with it being a game, gets undermined. But we're equally bad at it with museums, right? So I was just up in Edinburgh for a conference, and there's a display up there which is of a Viking burial reconstruction, and all the artifacts are like very accurately placed exactly where they were found in the excavation. But they lost the skeleton during the move of the museum, and so they just chucked whatever skeleton they had in there. So it's a Viking burial, but the guy who's in there is a Pict. He's not part of, he's not even from that era. He's not even part of that. He's missing both of his feet for some reason, but they don't write it on anything because to them it would undermine the authority of the display to say that it's different. And I think there's a little bit of that going on with games as well, or simulation history games, like Assassin's Creed, where it's like there's like a duty of care to be realistic or respectful to history to a point. But then if you go too far, then you're undermining gameplay, or you're undermining kind of the authority of the game in a lot of ways.
It sounds similar to what they said about that staircase in NASA, like, oh, we'll just sneak it in, like in the
Yeah,
museum.
exactly, yeah.
Like, people expect a skeleton, so we'll just sneak one in,
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and museums definitely have a long way to go, I think, as well, to really start talking about their subjectivity, because a lot of times they're still seen, as these temples of truth and wisdom, which is not necessarily the case, obviously, because a lot of the knowledge in museums is still, interpretation and created But yeah, I think it's interesting how they sort of, sneak in these inaccuracies that are expected, sort of, to make it more as people think it should be.
Yes, so would you excuse it in the case of the museum? The fact that they put a replica in or a different thing in?
See, I would feel better about it if they had either a copy or a replica of that skeleton, or otherwise leave it out and tell the story of how the hell a museum can lose a skeleton.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
Which would be really
No
interesting,
sense.
I think. I mean, to be fair, once you get behind the scenes at a museum, you start realizing how much museums don't know, and how even the best and the greatest museum has, a poor grasp on their entire collection, for instance. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was collected in the past, and all the information about it is kind of vague. And that's, I think, what museums should focus on talking about as well. And in a lot of cases, they're not. But I don't think, what Tara just told us, that really bothers me. They would just sneak in something that's so completely different and then not sort of disclose it.
So why does it bother you more with a museum exhibition that I think less people get to see in the end than with a game like Assassin's Creed that a multi-million people
I'm not
audience gets to
saying
see?
it would bother me more. I think it's different.
Why?
Because I think museums still carry more weight for most people to be accurate. I think most people, for instance, if you're doing a school project, as you're in an elementary school or early high school, you're doing a school project. If you take your information from a museum label, your teacher will be like, good job. If you take your information from Assassin's Creed, your teacher would probably be kind of skeptical.
Sure, but why?
Because it's assumed, still, by a lot of people, that museums are more accurate with regards to information and facts and the truth than games.
Yeah,
on the other hand, we're talking about all the memes that are floating out on the internet. I passed my exam because of Assassin's Creed 2, because of Assassin's Creed Unity. So
No
this
people saying they passed their exams because they spent the weekend at the museum.
Yeah. So
No, I know. I think that's the interesting part, that video games have a much wider reach and probably a much greater impact on especially the young generation, but at the same time there's still this perceived difference in authority with regards to accuracy about history between
which is
games
kind of
and
weird, because then
museums.
if you go back to the idea of authenticity as something that may be very subjective,
Mhm.
where does authority come in there? The idea that you're an authority as a museum, you could be just one of the voices.
I know.
And more, I think with games like this, we are seeing that people are living through their own histories or other people's histories, and seeing this as an authentic and also, I guess, accurate representation of what's actually going on. Because of course that sort of multivocal part of what Assassin's Creed is, that's not really forefronted very often,
Yeah.
except in the beginning screen
No.
and in those little database things if you care to read through them.
I guess it's a bit of a maturity thing as well, that or like a maturity thing for museums that I think, as Scylla was saying earlier, we tend to get cast as
So how
these
do you
kind of
think I'm doing?
repositories of knowledge.
Tara's talking.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Continue, Tara.
We kind of get cast as these repositories of objective knowledge, that it's like we know what the past is because we're historians and archaeologists, and I think that we now know that's not the case. We get to see parts of it, and I think that when we talk about games and we expect them to be accurate in the same way that we've previously been cast, it's kind of not getting the point, or it's not seeing what games are, because they're stories. They're kind of like one reflection of what might have been, imagined by one group of people, in much the same way that when you write a book about history, you're not writing history, you're writing a reflection of it. But it's kind of, I think, only recently that we've really started to see that, or to explore or understand that distinction.
Yeah.
But to
And
what
I think
extent?
that's exactly how people working in museums are beginning to see museums as well. That an exhibition is a story written by a few people based on their interpretations of some things that we maybe know.
Not in every museum, not in
No.
the
No,
British
but that's
National
what I'm
Museum
saying.
or whatever.
Like, if you're in the museum theory, that's where the theory is going.
Yeah.
But in practice, museums are quite slow to change their exhibitions despite what their staff might be thinking.
Yeah, but then it also comes back into the topic of revenue and I guess if a museum starts saying that, you can come and see, but we're not really sure about what you're looking at, it's what we think, then it's not a good selling point.
Yeah.
And then that is also the case.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was
With the
trying to
game.
get at. What is the role of archaeologists in this? Is it just a story? Why have we been studying for, I don't know, 10 years in my case, including my PhD? Why do we even do this? If it's a story, what's the place of us? Existential crisis here.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good story is anchored in reality. No?
Why?
That's not
Because being anchored in reality makes it more realistic. And being more realistic when you're playing it makes you feel like, oh, this makes sense. And the more it makes sense, the more you're drawn in and engaged in it. And if something clearly doesn't make sense, when you're like, well, this is insane. Like, for instance, spoilers, Game of Thrones episode.
No!
No, don't do that.
It's not
Don't do that.
It's not a real
Don't do
spoiler.
that.
It's not a real spoiler. But at some point, Daenerys is on this mountain. She clearly doesn't see anything. She walks down, there's a massive Dothraki horde. And I'm thinking to myself, why did you not see this from the mountaintop? And it ruins the entire scene because it doesn't feel realistic.
But
Yeah,
that's a
but-
spoiler. A big one!
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is that so the problem with Assassin's Creed is that it should be realistic, but not so realistic that it ruins the fun.
Yeah.
So realism and being dedicated to what we know is apparently not the case. So it's not that the closest you get to reality, the better the story is.
No. But there has
it
to
is
be...
if you are sort of being preempted by playing this game as you're going to be a historical tourist or you're going to be playing through these affairs, then realism is important because that's what you're expecting, right?
But I'm discussing also design. So the designer and the storytellers of the game, they know they can get only so much close to reality because then if you jump from a rooftop on a cart, you should die at some point, right?
Yeah.
At some point, probably when you hit the ground.
Yeah,
Or
not
the
me
car.
there, but getting there.
Yeah. No, but that's the thing. I feel like it's probably this really hard kind of balance to strike, right? Between unrealistic but fun or action or exciting or whatever. And on the other hand, like having this realistic essence.
Yeah, but that's a different
if
thing.
If it's a
that's
historical
storytelling.
game. Because if it's
No,
not,
but that's not the case. Because you said Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is not even close to reality. But you
Yeah.
still need it to feel realistic
yes.
when it comes to humans, for example, or when it comes to emotions, or when it comes to stuff like that. You cannot be, you cannot say things that are not human related because humans will read the story unless we discover alien life. So.
Yeah.
So another thing
Yeah.
would be, why is it even fun to play historically realistic game. So why are there no fire-breathing dragons on Notre Dame? Would it not be more fun? I guess not.
Can I chip in on that as a gamer, not
Sure.
as a historical or archaeology? I have to say that the attraction of these games to me has always been that the fact that I knew very little of history, and in a way it did indeed teach me something about certain places and how they supposedly looked at the time. Like Chilla said earlier, that some students said, "Oh, I would never have passed my history exam, blah de blah." That's actually a valid remark, because to me it feels like I learned about the myth of the Templars aside, because that's obviously the mythical part of these games. The whole Da Vinci thing is a good example, I think, with his inventions. You walk into his shop, you see the little maquettes of the inventions that he supposedly made and stuff like that. To me, it just, I don't know, it would not feel right if there were extra elements in there like dragons and zombies and whatnot. It wouldn't feel right. This feels like a history simulation to me.
Yeah, but it is actually not.
No, I know.
Okay.
I know, but it does feel like it. And I think that's where the success of these games are, because I have a very good example of this from the racing world that I'm interested in.
Sure.
Where, first of all, if a game development company portrays itself as being a simulation developer, and they start, wow, realistic physics and stuff like that, and the game eventually comes out, and it turns out the physics are horrible, they will get so much flack of the actual community that is involved in sim racing and is involved in the simulation and the realisticness of it. But if it has a good arcade element and it keeps you playing, then the majority of the people who bought the game will really like it. And that brings us back to the fact that the people who care about that simulation element is only a fraction of the audience that they reach.
Sure.
And I think the success of these games is that they reached an audience that would have no interest in history whatsoever, perhaps. And now they might actually look into things.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the success of these games is. And that's why I don't think that the realism of them, well, I don't know. It matters less to me. I'll say it like that.
But of course, to those history buffs that know everything about French Revolution,
Exactly.
or that know everything about the Caribbean in the Age of Sail, that bothers them a lot more when they see Mayans in the Caribbean.
Of course, it's like when I'm playing a racing game and I'm like, oh man, this feels so unrealistic. This is stupid. This is way too easy and and I'm still playing, Yeah. I'm still having fun.
Yeah, so you are really bothered about the Mayan temples in the Caribbean, but yet you still play the game.
Yeah, of course, because the game is in itself fun. But for me, Assassin's Creed Black Flag is it's the most fantasy of the games that is in the Assassin's Creed series. So for me, that makes it less fun as a historical simulator. But maybe that's also because I know most about the Caribbean, and if I was more than just a slightly interested reader into French Revolution, this game would bug me more. Could be.
Yeah, but regardless of it bugging you, it's not like, oh, this game is so unrealistic, I'm gonna stop playing, or I'm not gonna play it.
Well,
or
actually, Assassin's Creed Black Flag was the first one that I didn't finish. So maybe that's something to do with that. Could be.
Or the size of the game. I don't know.
That size of the game also was...
This one feels a lot better, I have to say.
I also didn't finish this one yet, but this is still on the list.
Yeah.
On the list.
What's your favorite in the series, Tara?
My favorite's Liberation. Purely, well, it's got some really problematic representations of slavery in it.
Yeah.
But on the whole grounding of the idea that exploring gender and exploring how you present yourself outwardly in a world and kind of how that influences how people react to you, I thought was fascinating. And it kind of took the game, or the Assassin's Creed's game, from being like, let's feel like a badass and run around in cool historic settings, to being a really interesting commentary about how we deal with the past. And that carries through with Black Flag as well a bit, but
Less so.
less so, yeah.
Interesting. So for you, it is really about the experience of your avatar, of your character within that historical setting that makes for you a good Assassin's Creed game, or in this case, this is your question.
I think that when it becomes something that you can think about history, or it becomes a tool for kind of encouraging you to think about what's happening, or why history was like this, or why we think about history in these ways, that's important, and it matters less about the accuracy then, because you're thinking about the systems or the things which underpin that, versus something, say, like Tomb Raider, for example, where you go to these great locations which have archaeological significance, but you could honestly put Tomb Raider in space and it would make zero difference to the game.
Absolutely. I have to say, I've played, I think 6 of them.
Yep.
And compared to Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider is silly. It's really silly. It has no historic value whatsoever. I would feel that in the value project, games like Tomb Raider and perhaps even Uncharted, I don't know if they fit the series. This is a way more representative.
Well, anyway, it's also
game.
It would be good to look at them, not maybe as best practices,
just to prove our point. You know.
Oh, sure.
I mean, actually, Tomb Raider in our survey, which I mentioned before, was mentioned as #1 game associated with archaeology. Second on the list, Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones? Is that a video game even?
Oh
Apparently
yeah, lovely old adventure games.
Yeah.
Really
those,
good games. Yeah.
Oh my
That's what
god.
people know, you know.
Honestly, yeah, go
That's
ahead.
what people
Aris.
know. Indiana Jones comes with a franchise. It's not about being a game or not. They're just like, archaeology, Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Makes sense.
It's one of those. That's why I thought that question in our survey was interesting, because it's not necessarily asking people like, oh, what's the best history game or best archaeology game? It was really a question about association, and like the first thing people associate, or the first game people associate with archaeology is Tomb Raider, because it's like, oh yeah, archaeology games, Tomb Raider.
Sure.
Same with Assassin's Creed history.
Well, and then in that case, I mean, for history, I think it has a better sort of what do you call it?
Rep.
Icon, rep than archaeology has.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Any wrapping up remarks?
talking about reps.
Talking
Wrapping
about
up.
reps and wrapping up. From our callers from across the world, in the UK and Greece.
I don't know. It's been a warm day here, so I don't know about you guys.
Rain is cooking. Well, it's been a very hot day as well, which is why I had slippery hands. I couldn't really touch the button really well.
Yeah,
I know,
that's why I finished that mission.
That's why I had to pass the controller on.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
blames you.
So, I mean, in terms of authenticity of me being a gamer, this was definitely not an accurate representation.
It was very accurate though.
No, I'm an ace normally, but today something went wrong. It was a technical error. Cool. Anyway,
I have to say, this was a refreshing item in our games list, as opposed to the 2D games we've been playing for quite a while, or the Telltale games. What?
Bastion is not 2D.
yeah, don't slack Bastion. Don't even go there. Right. No, it's fun, and of course, I think we're gonna be going for a summer recess after this one.
Yeah, because for archaeologists, the summer is not a time for relaxing. The summer is the time for excavations and fieldwork.
Yeah.
So Aris is already in Greece, and he'll be doing some fieldwork, and we'll be off as well to various conferences and nice fieldwork locations in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So
Jamaica, man.
yeah, we'll definitely be doing some value stuff, specifically related to a paper that we're working on, and we are also starting to organize a conference, which will take
which
place
will go on
in-
during the summer, but no streams, we're guessing
No.
yet.
So-
If something changes about that, we'll let you know, of course.
Yeah.
But as far as we can see now, no games until early September.
Yes.
So this is nice. We wishing you all a happy summer. Play games, not too many of them. Also go outside and enjoy a bit of the sunshine.
Oh,
Like the World of Warcraft tip,
Yes, exactly.
explore the world outside of Warcraft.
That too. If you have any sort of feedback for us on the streams that we've been doing, or on games that we could be playing, should be playing, just drop us a line on our Twitter or Facebook or upcoming website. We're more than happy to look at that. And for now, let's sign off. Thanks, big times to Tara.
Yeah.
Side note, really nice with your perspective. That's much more focused on sort of the technical and developmental aspects of the Assassin's Creed series, which of course is something we don't have an insight in. You do. Thank you very much for your sharing your knowledge and your experiences with that, with us.
Loved it.
All right, and we'd love to have you back as a guest on the show. Maybe sometimes in real life on this couch, or otherwise
Yes.
through Skype. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we have beer.
We do have real life beers, authentic beers.
Can't say no to that.
So yeah,
All right.
there's that. Yeah.
Thanks to everybody who tuned in. I haven't got a clue of the hordes that saw me fail, but anyway, I hope it weren't too many people. We'll just cut out those bits for the YouTube edits.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right, thanks, peeps.
See you after the summer.
Bye bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.